welcome to this video. So today we're going to look at anaerobic respiration. So you do aerobic respiration in lots of detail, and anaerobic respiration barely gets a mention. So let's have a look at what does happen when we haven't got any oxygen, and therefore we need to do anaerobic respiration. So think about the 4 stages that we looked at for aerobic respiration. So we had number 1, glycolysis. Number 2, link reaction. Number 3, Krebs cycle. And number 4, oxidative phosphorylation. Now, if we're looking at anaerobic respiration, the word anaerobic means without. The an means without. Aerobic means with oxygen, so without oxygen. Okay, so which of these 4 stages uses oxygen? Well, the answer is just that it's the final electron acceptor of step number 4. So oxygen is the final electron acceptor. If you don't know what I mean by that, then watch that video. I'll just put number 4. Okay, so stage number 4, therefore, cannot happen without oxygen. Now, stage number 4 is so closely linked to 2 and 3 by using the products of 2 and 3 that actually link reaction and Krebs cycle also come to a halt if we haven't got any oxygen. And the only one that keeps going in anaerobic respiration is glycolysis. Okay, so in glycolysis, if you remember, we started off with glucose, and the glucose phosphorylated and then split into 2 molecules of triose phosphate. So we went from a 6-carbon glucose into 2 3-carbon molecules, and then they continued down and we made 2 molecules of pyruvate at the end. Now, along the way, you might remember that we used 4 ATP at the start here, but we made 2 ATP at the end here. So overall, we had a net gain of +2 ATP. Now, that's not a lot of ATP, but it's better than nothing. Okay. Now, the other thing that we had in this process is we used some molecules of NAD. And the NAD became reduced NAD. And then in aerobic respiration, that reduced NAD went off to stage 4 to drop off the hydrogen, and it came back as oxidized NAD ready to be reused. Now, because we haven't got stage 4, we need an alternative to that in order to get the hydrogens off the reduced NAD so that we've got NAD without hydrogen attached to be used again. So the first thing that we've come across with anaerobic respiration is it only glycolysis. It only uses glycolysis. Stage 1 of aerobic respiration is the only stage used in anaerobic respiration. So as soon as we haven't got oxygen, our cells will automatically default to anaerobic respiration. They will only be able to do glycolysis, which produces 2 ATP molecules per molecule of glucose, which is not very much. It's very, very little. Oops, it's very, very little amount, a very small amount of ATP that we're going to produce. So we're going to feel tired. And the time when we start to do anaerobic respiration is usually when we're exercising so much that we're using up the oxygen in aerobic respiration faster than we can breathe it in. And then our cells need to revert to anaerobic respiration. We can still get a little bit of glucose, but not very much. Now, the problem is that in order to continue with glycolysis, we need to regenerate NAD. Because what happens in NAD is that it all becomes reduced. And by reduced, if you remember back, it means that it picks up H's, hydrogens. Okay, so it all becomes reduced. It all becomes NADH. Okay, and we need it to be able to pick up more H, more hydrogen, in order to keep glycolysis going. But once all the NAD has become reduced NAD, once it's all become NADH, we can't pick up any more hydrogen. So the second part of this video is about how our bodies regenerate more NAD so that glycolysis can continue if we don't have any oxygen. Okay, so what happens is that we utilise our pyruvate that we've made in glycolysis. So we know that glycolysis basically looks like this. We start with glucose, it gets phosphorylated, it gets split, and in the end, we end up with 2 molecules of pyruvate. I'll put pyruvate times 2. So in anaerobic respiration, we get another stage, a new stage. And what happens is that that pyruvate that we've made gets converted into something called lactate. Now, sometimes we can feel this lactate being made because it forms lactic acid, which gives us a bit of a stitch. It makes our muscles hurt. And we can actually feel this as pain. So we know when we're doing anaerobic respiration because we can feel the lactic acid build up. Now, the main problem is that in glycolysis, one of the stages is that we need to use NAD to take a hydrogen, which forms reduced NAD or NADH. Okay, and we need that to make the ATP. But what happens over time is that all the NAD becomes NADH, and we need to be able to turn it back into NAD again. And that's what this process does. So if we've got the NAD, we can draw one of those curved arrows on there, and it turns it back, NADH, it turns back into NAD. Now often, rather than writing NAD and reduced NAD, if we write NADH, we should really put NAD plus. It's just the way we write it. So if we're writing in that format, we normally write a little plus up there. But anyway, what this is showing us is that here, this molecule of NAD is carrying hydrogen. Okay, where these arrows meet just here, what's actually happening is the NAD is giving, sorry, that's very clear writing, is giving the hydrogen to pyruvate to make lactate. So here, this NAD is not carrying the hydrogen because it's given it away. Okay. Then we make this molecule lactate, and we've got NAD that's not carrying hydrogen, and that NAD can then be used to go back over here to keep glycolysis going. Okay, now if we were to add some better language on here, we could say that this NAD here has been reduced. So all the time remembering our oil rig. So oxidation is loss, reduction is gain. So, oh, apologies, I've done that the wrong way around, haven't I? No apologies. So this, put that H back on there. This one here has got the hydrogen on it. So this one here has got the hydrogen, so that's the reduced NAD. Okay, this one here has lost it, so we could say that one has been oxidized. Here we can say NADH is giving the hydrogen to pyruvate, therefore the pyruvate is gaining, so the pyruvate is being reduced in order to make lactate. Okay, another label we could add is that NADH is losing the hydrogen, so we could say it's being dehydrogenated. So the NADH is dehydrogenated because it loses the hydrogen. You could say that the NAD has been oxidized because it's lost the hydrogen at that point. Okay, so In summary, there's hardly anything you need to know about anaerobic respiration. So the key points are this. Anaerobic respiration happens when we don't have enough oxygen. For example, when we're exercising. The only process that can happen is glycolysis. Glycolysis only makes 2 ATP per glucose, which is very, very little. Glycolysis will use up all the NAD, and therefore what we do is we convert pyruvate to lactate to make more NAD in order to allow glycolysis to continue. The last thing is, where does all of this happen? So if this is our cell, the temptation is to always think that respiration happens in the mitochondria. But you might remember that actually the only bits that happen in the mitochondria are stages 2, 3, and 4. Stage number 1, glycolysis, actually happens in the cell's cytoplasm. So anaerobic respiration does not happen in the mitochondria, it happens in the cytoplasm.